The- So this is episode 4 of, and this is probably going to be a very short one. So this is going on my series of kind of comparing domestic violence offenders and dictators, or just in world history, anybody who has used the settler colonial mindset. So let's continue. This is going to be a short one. So again, domestic violence offenders versus, for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to focus on Israel. Then people will talk about essentially the aspect of, oh, the words matter and not the behaviors. Where if a father comes to court and is like, oh, but I love my children, I just want, to be a good parent, and I want to get custody of my children because I love them so much. Comparison. You look at Netanyahu, he's like, oh, the hostages. I care about the Jewish people. I care about my Jewish people that are being taken hostage. Right? Now, look at the behaviors. They essentially, these kind of people, when we went over the past few days, the psych profile of what their brain functions like, they do not really have the concept of empathy, of feelings and emotions internally. So they're hollow on the inside. They are detached from their own humanity. So they can't find empathy for another person, including their own, so including their children, including his own populace of Jewish people. So they essentially are very manipulative and will use people as pawns. They use people as objects. So in a domestic violence situation, I use the gender male because the statistically most common, but I mean they are female domestic violence offenders too. So a domestic violence offender will use the children after the victim has left that dynamic. They'll use the children as a pawn, as a means to continue the control, right? They don't actually care about the children. The way you know about that is look at the behaviors. The words coming out of their mouth is, I love my kids. Do they show up for their children's parent-teacher meetings? Do they cut their children's nails? Do they do the groundwork of parenting? Or do they just, once they get the kid, they punt it off to like a different childcare provider, make the victim pay for it, just so they can maintain control? It's not like they do any of the parenting. They just want the title of parent, right? Israel. Oh, but the hostages. The Jewish people who have been taken hostage. When they were released recently from captivity, they went live. The hostages who were under Hamas control, right, in Palestine, they went live stating that they were more afraid of dying by IDF bombing than they were of dying at the hands of Hamas. They weren't afraid that Hamas was going to kill them. They were afraid that Netanyahu was carpet bombing Palestine and Gaza left, right, and center. Does that make sense? If you cared about the hostages, like if your child was taken hostage by this terrorist in this building, and you're like, oh, but I want my child back, let's raise that building down. Your child will die with the building and the terrorist, right? Clearly, Netanyahu does not actually care about his Jewish people who were taken hostage, because if he did, he would use like talks to try to get the hostages back. He doesn't care. He wants domination, right? He doesn't, somebody who's unable to value life and unable to compromise, unable to have a discussion and say, okay, Hamas wants freedom. Hamas wants us to back off and stay in our area of Israel and not encroach into Palestine. Okay, in return for people, let's do. He can't do it. He's like, I don't care. I want domination. I'm gonna, if it takes me raising down all of Hamas, all Palestinians, including the Jewish people who were taken hostage, fine, I'll do that. I just want domination. Same thing in the domestic violence space. The father is look at the behaviors. He never shows up for any parent-teacher meeting. He doesn't really participate in the child's private life, either at school or in terms of like social life. All they care about is themselves and appearing as a father or a mother than behaving like one, right? Same here. Netanyahu wants to appear like a strong leader, but is like, look at the behaviors, right? Next up, unequal rules. In the domestic violence space, father will get a custody order, right? And the victim is asked to follow the custody order to the T. You're not allowed to move an inch. But the offender, the domestic violence offender, will never follow the custody order. They just won't because it's inconvenient for them. And if it's they feel like they're above the law. Like the law applies to you, not to me. And if you don't accept what I want, me being the abuser, if you don't accept what I want outside of the court order, if you don't work with me to break the court order when it comes to me, then I will tell everybody that you're the problem. You're the one who isn't being cooperative. We have a court order for a reason. There's no cooperation when it comes to the victim, but the abuser will be like, oh, I deserve cooperation. I don't have to apply, these rules don't apply to me. Same thing with the unequal rules. Same thing applies with Israel and Palestine. They had rules. This was Israel's spot. This was Palestine's spot. Just continue as usual. Israel set up like embankments, or basically they set up illegal settlements within Palestine that went against the order. But it's okay. It's Israel. They can do whatever they want, and you can't hold them accountable. The rules and the laws don't apply to them, but they apply to the oppressed. Same behavior pattern, right? I think my last statement is, if you hold them accountable, if you try to hold them accountable, then you are the aggressor. So there's a statement that goes like, if somebody is unwilling to take accountability feels like an attack. And this is the same behavior type. We went over this the past few days, where these kind of like psychological profile is, they will do anything to not be held accountable. Because they don't think the problem is that they don't follow the laws, they don't care about humanity. The problem is like, they care about image management. So when you hold them accountable, they look bad. They look like they did bad things. And they're like, oh, I don't want to appear like a bad person. That they care more about that. So when you hold them accountable, you're the aggressor because you're ruining their reputation. Let's just ignore the aggression that they actually engaged in. We're going to ignore that. But now that you are trying to tell everybody that, oh, they didn't follow the rules, right? They're whatever, they're racist, they're sexist, that is the problem, because you are ruining their reputation. We see this even in the domestic violence space, in the rape space, right? Like when a rape victim comes forward and says, this person sexually assaulted me, or abused me, then it's like, oh, poor victim, poor whatever, aggressor, you're ruining this good man's reputation. We saw that with Kavanaugh, right? With Brett Kavanaugh. It's like his reputation is more important than the actual harm he caused women, multiple women, right? Like, it's the same behavior pattern. Even with Israel. Why is US like buddy with Israel? It's money. It's the money trail. Why did they veto against, the ceasefire? It's like the accountability aspect. We can't hold our best friends accountable because, oh, look at what happened to them in the history. Like, oh, the Holocaust. Palestine had nothing to do with the Holocaust. Yet, they use their past to gain sympathy, somehow they twist the past to make it acceptable that they are currently engaging in aggressive, abusive behaviors. That's the problem, right? Now, what is the solution forward? Because a lot of people say, oh, it's so difficult to determine who's the aggressor, who's the victim. Because look at what they're saying. They say they care about Jewish people. I don't want to appear as being anti-Semitic. I don't want to appear as being anti-father, right? This whole fatherhood movement in terms of, when we talk about domestic violence, aggressor and victim behaviors, we're talking about behavioral patterns. We don't talk about gender. Statistically, happens to be male, but doesn't mean that in every single situation, the man is the abuser. It's not vice versa, right? We need to look at the behaviors. Anybody can say, I love my kids, but look at the behavior. Do they know the names of their kids' doctors? Do they know the name of their teachers? Do they know what grade the kid is in? Do they know who the kid's friends are? Do they take the kid to the play dates with their friends? Do they show up for parent-teacher meetings? Do they do homework for the kid? Do they give the kids bath? Do they cut them? Look at the behaviors. It never matches up because they don't care about the kid. They want the title of appearing like a father and appearing as somebody. They care about control, domination, power, and control. That's the only thing they care about. Same with Israel. Look at the behaviors. All this money that Netanyahu is spending in a war, he couldn't spend it on his own people and develop his infrastructure, increase schooling. You could do all those things, but you refuse to because you want domination. And then we turn it around saying, oh, but the Jewish people, though the hostages, he uses Jewish hostages as pawns to push on his own agenda of domination. It's the same thing that domestic abusers do. They use the children as pawns. So focus on the behavioral aspects of what a person is doing than what a person is saying. And that spans everything from a dictator to a judge, your elected official, your horrible boyfriend, whatever it is. Look at the behaviors. Even like there'll be plenty of domestic violence victims who are like, oh, but yes, he hit me, but he said he loves me. He hit you. Somebody who loves you is not gonna hit you. Look at the behaviors. Words are cheap and words are hollow. Across humanity, it doesn't matter whether it's your parent, it's your boyfriend, it's the president of this country. Words are hollow. Look at the behaviors, look at the actions. Love is a verb. It's a verb, it's an action. The act of being loving and caring and compassionate and kind. It's an action. It's not because psychopaths and sociopaths, the 20% of the population that is like high conflict, has whatever n number of personality disorders, their perception of love, because yes, they say, oh, I love you, but their perception of love is very messed up. They love in terms of an object. It's like saying, I love my iPhone, or I love mango ice cream. I don't have to take care of mango ice cream. I don't have to take care of my phone. If my iPhone dies, I'll just get a new iPhone. The iPhone's not a living creature. It doesn't have hopes and dreams. It doesn't have any value inherently. It has value based on how I can benefit from it, right? I love mango ice cream because it tastes really nice on my tongue. I don't have to take care of it. Versus I love this plant. I must water it. I must nurture it. I can make sure that it gets sunlight. That's a different kind. That's how normal people love. We love real people, like living creatures, our pets, our plants, people, because we nurture them. Loving is nurturing, not just consumption. Right? Netanyahu loves his Jewish people in terms of consumption. He loves the power he gets from being the president or being a leader. He doesn't care about nurturing and looking after and actually doing the leadership aspect of his job. Same with these abusive men. They don't care about nurturing and caring for their children or their spouse or their girlfriend or their whatever boyfriend. They care about consuming. I want to consume this. They're takers. I want to feel good because now, I get whatever, attention. I get whatever it is. I get public perception that, I'm a family man or a family person. When look at what they're doing. Are they nurturing and caring their spouse? Are they nurturing and caring their children? It's the same thing. When you look at yesterday, we went over the Britain's colonization of India, right? Europeans who came to the US, Europeans who took African people as enslaved them. They can say, oh, but I love my enslaved people. They use them. They love how they get free labor. They don't actually nurture them, care for them, make sure that they get freedom. You think when Britishers came to India, they loved India. They loved being there because they loved exploiting it. They consume Indian resources, Indian labor. So their definition of love is completely different from a normal person's definition of love. They love something in terms of what they can consume from it. I love my car because I can use it to go from point A to point B. My car doesn't have emotions and feelings. It doesn't have hopes and dreams. I don't have to nurture my car. I sometimes take it to a garage to fix it, but it's not a living creature. And the high conflict psychological profile type, whether it be a dictator or domestic violence offender, they do not believe that their victim is human. They dehumanize it to a point where it's an object and it serves a purpose in my life. When it doesn't do the job, then I can discard it. So that's all I have for today. Thank you again for joining me. As I've put on my feed, and both of you all have seen on the news, there has the UN passed a resolution to like demand ceasefire, but it's not permanent. So, our job isn't done. We still need to use our voices. There is no liberation until it's collective. Nobody's free until everybody's free. So we need to use our voices. Using your voice works. Grassroots activism works. Don't let anybody tell you that, oh, your vote doesn't matter, or you posting about something doesn't matter. You talking to your friends and your neighbors and your the elders in your community, it matters. Every time you talk about it matters. Even if it's not on social media, right? Just because people are sometimes afraid that, oh, I don't want to come across as being anti-Semitic, or I don't want to come across as like somebody who delves in people's personal lives when, I know domestic violence is happening. It's like, why do you care so much about public perception? Do you think you're anti-Semitic? Is talking against genocide, do you think makes you anti-Semitic? If it doesn't, then who cares what other people have to say about you? Be on the right side of history. At some point, people were like, oh, talking against the Britishers is like, whatever, anti-Christian, no? Anti-establishment. That's the point of it. The point is the anti-establishment. If our ancestors didn't stand up for the right side of history, we would all of us would still be under, and it's not just like in India, in any part of the world, we would all still not have the right to self-determination. We should be grateful for our ancestors who fought for our right for self-determination, and it's our responsibility to make sure every sentient being has the right for self-determination, wherever they are. So, please use your voice to, continue on the work. I also have a YouTube series that I've created, which goes over like the neuroscience behind empathy and consciousness and compassion, where and this may be on the theoretical end, where I personally believe that humans in general are biologically geared for empathy and compassion. And if that doesn't happen, something went wrong, right? Like you weren't raised properly, you have a genetic defect, something went wrong somewhere. But that's not the basic state of being. So it's about how do you reverse that? How do you get back in touch with your inner truth, which is supposed to be compassionate creatures. It's there in every single, like when you look at theology, in every single religion, they talk about, oh, we're supposed to, treat our neighbors like ourselves. But it's like, that's cognitive. We technically know that, human rights exist and I shouldn't, hurt people, but people still engage in those behaviors. So the issue isn't that, you don't know what's right and what's wrong. It's that you don't live it. You don't inherently, it's like a language. It's like learning a new language. So it's about how do you need the basic building blocks before. I can't just telling you, oh, why can't you be more compassionate? It's so easy for me. It's easy for me because my brain talks compassion. Like it's a native language in my head. And it's about teaching the native language of compassion and empathy to like people who don't inherently, and it's not their fault. They just didn't. It's like saying, oh, why do you not know French? If you weren't raised in France, you probably don't know French, right? It's about learning the language. It's about reconnecting with your inner humanity. And it's not about blame, saying, oh, you want, like, it is what it is. You need to acknowledge the present to then like work on being better in the future. We can't look at history and then use history to justify continued aggression. The point of history is we like, oh, the Holocaust happened, that was terrible. They use the same rhetoric of otherifying. They're like, oh, those people are inhumane and hence it's okay to like, put them in gas chambers. It wasn't okay then, it's not okay today. Genocide wasn't okay during the World War and it's not okay today. Using this false sentiment of, oh, if you don't, support a genocide, hence you're anti-Semitic. Like the point of being pro-Jewish people is being anti-genocide. If you're pro-genocide, that makes you anti-Semitic. Being pro-genocide makes you anti-Semitic because it takes away the basic premise of what happened during the Holocaust. the otherifying of a specific group of people just based on their religious affiliation, which is what is happening now. So if you feel compelled in a way to say, oh, I don't feel comfortable speaking up about this because I don't want to be labeled as being anti-Semitic, well, like, question yourself. Do you think that you're anti-Semitic by being anti-genocide? If not, if you don't think that, then it doesn't matter what your neighbors say. It shouldn't matter what anybody else has to say. What matters is what does your inner moral compass say. So thank you so much. This is the end of episode 4. I think this is probably the end of this series, and I'm just going to focus on my YouTube series for now. Thank you. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I'll look forward to a discussion with you guys. Bye.